Roxy.
Good morning, Tam Tam.
My day has been reduced to one peach. That's all I've eaten today. It's like, what is the time? It's 4:15. I haven't even put on underwear or mascara. It's like one of those days. How's your day going?
Yeah, it's like one of those days I get you where it's like no motivation whatsoever to just have a normal life. It's like this quarantine, it's like there's no end. There's no end in sight.
Did you put your underwear on?
Barely. Actually, I didn't. I didn't. And my daughter caught me because she saw me, of course, going to the bathroom because she always barges in.
Are you joking?
I go to the bathroom? No. Always comes in when I go to the bathroom. And she was like, Mommy, where is your underwear? And I was like, oh, shit. That's a good question.
You know what I did yesterday? Last night, I was so tired. I went to the bathroom and then there was no toilet paper. And I was like, look, I did a number one, so it's fine. There was no toilet paper. And I was like, guys do this all the time. Yeah. So I just shook myself, did a little shimmy shake like a dog. And I was like, this will be fine. But I was like, I've hit all lows. I've hit new lows. That's it.
Right? I mean, how low can we go? How low can we go?
We can get probably worse. Well, who do we have today, Roxy?
Oh my gosh. I am so excited. She's one of our mom, compadres. I mean, we are stoked to have her. So we've got Ellie Knaus on the show. She is one of the OG podcasters.
I know, right from the beginning, before all this bullshit podcast came out like ours.
She literally has set the tone for the moms. She is out there, talking to everybody, to experts, to psychologists, to celebrity moms, to everybody. And she's also written a screenplay with her husband. Sold it. And a TV show, a sitcom.
And didn't kill him and was able to work with him, which is a feat in itself.
Right. And she deserves a medal or an award or a trophy and maybe all the things. But we've got Ellie Knaus on today.
Welcome. See, how was that for a welcome? You know when you're on this show. Don't you worry.
She is the atomic mom.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Yes. We're so excited to have you, Miss Ellie. How's your day going?
It's okay.
Yeah,
it's kind
of put on underwear.
I put on underwear. But my new ritual is taking the girls around a loop in our neighborhood, a very short one. Because I have a 2-year-old and a 6. Oh God, she just turned 3 actually this week. I got to change it up, right? She's 3 now. So she really has no excuse for not wearing underwear on the walk. And she lifted up her dress for the whole street to see. So she was wearing a mask, but no underwear.
I love it. I love it. That happened to me at school. I had this moment in my parenting life where I was like, I think I'm a shit mom. And I was in the car and I remember getting to school and Phoenix looks at me and she goes, Mom? And I go, yes, honey. And I was already in a bad place. I was exhausted. And when you're anyone's about to say something and you'll burst into tears. I was like, yes, honey. She goes, I don't have any underwear on. She was walking into school and I was like, what do I do? Do I just let her go to school with no underwear? So I had to go home and then I was late. It was just one of those moments where I'm just like, I'm a shitty mom.
Oh my God.
This is not a good job.
It happens.
Yeah, leggings, though, I feel like it's a free-for-all. That's fine. Right. Leggings are fine.
Right.
Especially if you're potty training, that's fine. It's just when it's shorts, dress, skirt.
And they lift them up.
They love to lift it up.
Because it's not a party till they lift them up, So Miss Ellie, God, your podcast, Atomic Moms, I feel like it's the go-to for all moms. You have to listen to this podcast. It's amazing. But you've been doing it since 2014. What made you decide to start Atomic Moms?
We decided to make Atomic Moms before Serial came out.
Oh, wow.
So it was, the very beginning of the huge podcast wave and where everyone started listening. I was obsessed with the podcast Here's the Thing with Alec Baldwin. Mm-hmm. And I also always loved This American Life that Ira Glass runs. And I would go on hikes and just disappear into these people's lives. And I loved it so much. I loved just the format of long form conversations and that it wasn't just these quick sound bites and the quick YouTube stuff. And it was I can actually settle into people's stories. And there was an intimacy of listening to someone's voice while I was going on a walk or doing errands I didn't want to do. And I could just sort of escape in that, which was so lovely. And I really turned to it when I was pregnant. And so then it became, okay, well, why not a parenting podcast?
Mm-hmm.
And then it became, well, I didn't bother reading any of these books when I was pregnant. Now that I have a kid, maybe I should start figuring out what to do, because I was so woefully unprepared to be a mother. And I was resistant to becoming one. And I know, Roxy, I feel like I heard on one of your episodes that there was a similar thing. Like, I was not a woman who wanted, I was not a little girl playing with dolls. Like, I loved the idea of babysitting. I was obsessed with the Babysitters Club because of, and the author Anna Martin, but that was about entrepreneurship and like making money and being a boss. Like, I had no interest in actually taking care of children. And so the podcast really became my own course in how to do this, and not in the quote unquote right way, because there's so many different ways to parent. And I was lucky enough to be raised by my mother and also my stepmother, and they are so different. So I always, like, growing up in two households, I always knew there was more than one way. And it was about figuring out, like, what is the right way for me and my partner. And through interviewing psychologists and these authors and sort of like running my own experiments by reading the book and then saying, like, hey, okay, so Janet Lansbury, like, everybody loves you, but here's what's actually happening with my 2-year-old. Like, what do I do now? And that has, God, it's given me so much. Like, I almost needed to create this experiment in order to both, like, own that I'm a mother and that I'm a good mother. I needed to do it to repair some early childhood trauma and really heal some transgenerational stuff in regards to motherhood and like the way that my family has like raised children for generations and generations and the damage that's been done. And then to also be able to step aside from the experts and everyone and just talk to other moms and be like, okay, well, this is how I do it. This is how you do it. That's great. Like, let's figure it out. And this is all impossibly hard.
Yeah.
I find it still so surreal being a mother. Like, do you guys feel that way? Like, I looked at my daughter yesterday and I just stared at her face, and I kind of like became a little disconnected for a second, because I was like, every time I look at my children, I feel like I'm having an existential crisis. I'm like, where do you come from? Where, like, did your soul, like, where did it fall out of the sky? And I still, after 6 years, I'm shocked that I'm a mother. And I don't know if women or if mothers even say that out loud. It still feels very surreal. And I get a lot of anxiety over the fact that they're being molded by me, you know, and my husband, and they are unformed, and we are giving them ideas and perceptions, and, you know, we're teaching them hopefully things that are good, but we still have traumas that we have to heal, you know? But I don't know what you guys think, but I still find it, after 6 years, surreal being a mother.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like, because it's also like hard to even fathom that these little people came out of you, you know? Like,
where'd they come from?
Your body like created these kids, and now here they are, and they are your responsibility, like 100%. And that is part of, I think, the scariness of it, is to like think to yourself, oh God, did I just do something that was going to like fuck her up like permanently for the rest of her life? Like, it's just like you have so much, it's almost like you wield power when you're a parent in that way, you know, like you have these lives that depend on you and that are, you know, they're so impressionable. And so it's like, do you guys freak out about that? Like, oh my God, did I do something that's going to like fuck her up, or like, you know, like, oh shit. Is that something that you guys think about?
Well, I find it fascinating that I am responsible for her. And yes, especially with our younger children, like we are still the ones they look up to. And thank God they're still listening, even if they pretend like they're not, versus when they're older and it seems to be more peer driven. So yes, like huge responsibility there. in terms of like, what are we talking about at the dinner table? And like, what am I saying? And like, how am I modeling to her my own disappointment? And how do I show her that like my work is really important to me? So these are the boundaries I have. And like, I'm sorry that you're upset right now, and we'll readdress this in a couple hours. I know you're in a safe space pouting and your father can handle it because I'll come back in 2 hours. But like, I need to model that for her. So yes, 100%, I feel so much responsibility. I think what I'm also very surprised by is how much our genetics come into play with, you know, if we are biological parents. And just like, holy cow, like there's my 6-year-old. I know we all have very fierce 6-year-olds. Like I was listening, I was like reading the conscious parenting stuff from the very beginning. And like, she is a wild child.
I know.
And she is so competitive, just fiercely competitive. And it's been really cool because there was some of that stuff that I took a step back from. I was trying to let some of that competitive edge that I naturally have go. And I was trying to be more relaxed and zen about stuff. And I was trying to take on these like hippier things. And then I have this child who's like, I'm a winner. And it's been really cool to watch her and realize like, oh, this was little me. And like, and I need to accept that part of me as well, because it's just in us.
Yeah.
I literally birthed myself. I'm like, everything that I don't like about myself is the thing that is challenging with parenting my 6-year-old, and all the things that I do like and respect about myself are the same things in her. But it is interesting how genetics come into play. You know, I was born in South Africa, and my parents would leave, and there was a lot of violence around the time that I was born. And I was a very nervous child. You know, I would be very scared if my parents left. And, you know, we're with Phoenix, our 6-year-old, 24/7. But it's funny, every time she won't sleep in her own room. She's cannot let us even leave to go to the kitchen. She is by my side 24/7. And that is something that has to be genetic, like you were saying, you know, because it's not environmental. We live in a very safe neighborhood. She has friends. We teach her that she's, the world is which it's not, but we teach her that it's a good, wonderful, safe place. That she's not going to walk outside and get shot. Again, I don't know if that's where we're living right now, but like, so that does come from like what you were saying of your genetics coming to like such massive play.
It was really funny. I had, my therapist had a few sessions with my husband, and I have been trying to untangle my own anxiety. My God, probably since I moved here in 2005. And, LA will bring up anxiety in anyone. Yeah. And now everyone has anxiety, especially with what's going on in the world. But recently, when I had my husband come on with me to like do a session together, he asked her like, well, is there anything else? And it was the first time my therapist ever said like, some people are just wired that way. Like, yeah. And I was like, oh my God, even my therapist has given up on me. It's true. It's like, yes, so much of it is like, what are we giving to our children, right? Like, yes. I mean, it's both. That's all.
It's environmental as well.
I can hear like listeners like arguing at both sides. Like, but it is, but we, I try to be chill with my kids. I have very like confident kids. My younger one is latching on to me. I think that's more of the pandemic and just us being in a house together for 140 days. But it's
how many days? I'm like, I have no one counting. We're like 100 and a half, 0.5. I'm like, how many days? 100 and what days? How many?
Exactly. Do you guys? Have you found? Yes.
140, right? Oh,
well, I mean, and now we're going to release this a little later. So we have been together so much since March 13th.
March 13th was D-Day.
That was like D-Day. I know. That was like the last day of physical school.
Freaked out.
Right? That was the end of everything.
That was freedom.
That was it. That was it. But the pandemic, like you were saying, it's created also anxiety for all of us. And not to mention we're working moms. So we're like dealing with all of that. how have you been dealing in the pandemic with all of that going on? Because you still have to run a business. I mean, you're still podcasting. You still have to be a mom. You still have, you're a wife. Like, so it's like, how are you dealing with all these things?
By taking like breaths like that.
Like,
oh my God, you guys. Oh no, I will say
medication.
I did start up on Zoloft again, and I am not ashamed to say it.
Yeah,
I started up on Zoloft again
on that
because I was crying every day. Like everything felt so raw for me. And the funny thing was, I had an interview with Glennon Doyle the week.
Oh my God.
The week that like everything went to shit. Yeah. And so it's like March 16th. I don't know. But so we were all home, right? I'm like, oh my God, I've got this amazing interview with Glennon Doyle. I asked her, because she, in her book, she speaks about taking medication and that it just takes the edge off, but she feels like she's truly herself on it. Because I was asking, like, do you really... I was trying, I was being sensitive to it, but I was basically asking her about her anti-anxiety and depression medication. And if that, if she still feels like she's truly herself when she's on it. She said, yes, she needs it. And anyone who judges her can like go jump in a lake, basically. I feel high as a kite after that conversation. I walk in the house. My husband has a mask on and he says, I just took my temperature. It's 102. And I was like, what?
Oh my gosh.
Like Glennon Doyle was just telling me to trust the universe.
Yeah. Don't trust this.
Yeah.
So he ended up in, and this was the week that, everything had shut down. There were no tests yet at all. The recommendations from the doctors, and he has an autoimmune disease. So I was extra freaked out.
Gosh.
His rheumatologist said, do not go to the hospital unless you're having trouble breathing. So he was isolated in his bedroom and in our bedroom. But I am such a wacko that I had already moved my stuff into the guest room just in case someone got sick and we had to isolate. Like, this is how crazy I am. And I was like, pat on the back, Ellie. So I was in the guest room and it was so terrifying. And then 4 days later, he didn't have a fever for 4 days. His doctor said he could come out of the room. But that really took a toll on him emotionally. It really stressed him out. Something about being separated from us in such a scary situation and not being able to see us, like, was a real bummer for him. And at one point I opened the door. He opened the door to get like his little pathetic meal because I suck at cooking. Like that I had put on I'm sure it was like canned soup or something like by the door. And I was like 6 feet back and waved and he had like a tear streaming down his face. And I was like, oh my God, this is so, meanwhile, I was feeling so sorry for myself because I was taking care of my 2-year-old and 6-year-old and they were quote unquote on spring break at the time. This was before we knew that our kids would never get to go to school again. And I was feeling so bad for myself. But when I saw him, I realized like, oh, this is so, the separation everyone's feeling and the aloneness is so deep. And that was such a crazy way to kick off our quarantine. When he came back, I was just I had been in a place of like, fight or flight and like, let's get through it. And when he was okay, then I kind of let down my guard. And then things started to affect me deeply. And I got very worried about my parents. And my parents, both my dad and my stepmother got COVID. They're better now.
Oh my God.
But my mom didn't seem to have the same concerns as I have. And so that's been very difficult for me to be worried about her and her, not being worried about her. And then I started taking Zoloft again. And again, my therapist said, I just had some extra from when I had gotten off it like 1.5 years ago. And I was concerned about going on it again. And this doesn't need to be a podcast all about how Ellie went back on meds, but
please, I have so many questions after you.
But it was,
explain this.
I had the jar or the pills. Like I didn't want to get back on it. I really wanted to do it on my own. And but everything just felt really hot. And my daughters kept kind of saying like, oh, mommy, why are you crying? Like a song would get me, anything. It just, everything felt so big. And I started feeling the pain of what everyone is going through. And it was too much. And my therapist said, don't worry, Ellie, it'll still be really hard on Zoloft.
Thanks.
And she was right. And I am so, I have reservations. I'm not recommending it for anyone else. Talk to your doctor. For this particular moment and some of the challenges that our family has gone through personally, it felt like the right thing to do.
I have been told that I should have been on medication 10 years ago. I've never actually said this on a podcast. I've struggled, not as much anymore, but with severe anxiety from, I've had just weird shit happen in my life. I was in a plane that went down, and then I was in the tsunami, that killed 250,000 people in Thailand. Then I had a migraine that mimicked a stroke. They thought I was dying. So just so many things. Yeah. And then I had, anorexia and bulimia when I was a kid. And then I was on a TV show that was really successful. And then I felt like then I came here and no one gave a shit. And then there's so many things that I have anxieties about, but I'm more afraid to take the medication than I am of my own fears. Does that make sense?
Listen to yourself.
But the problem is, it probably would help me. It would probably help me in my life, and I'd probably feel more like myself without the constant chatter, but I'm too afraid to take the step because I think, well, what if I take the step and it makes you, so you can explain what your experience is like, what if it makes you more anxious? What if it makes you more crazy? Or what if it makes you more down? Or what if you can't get out of that and then you're on something and then you have to move through that? And all these questions that you don't know unless you do it, but that I think inhibits so many people and the stigma from actually getting help.
But do you also feel like it deadens your feelings?
Yeah, that's what I worry about too.
As an
I think some of my feelings could be deadened. I'm like, my husband would be very happy about that.
Right. No, I was crying the other day and I was like, oh, look, I can still do it. But
that's the best.
No, and there's different medications and people have different experiences depending on the medication and what time of life you're in and what dosage you have. I was on it, and I've not spoken about this before, but when Eliza, my now 3-year-old, was born, I went on it, and I had a significantly better experience with the early motherhood. It was so much better. I am someone who cannot function on 5 or 6 hours of sleep.
Yeah, yep.
I get so jagged. I get so angry. I am chemically incapable of handling my shit if I have less than 6 hours of sleep. And for some reason, with Zoloft, when Eliza was born, it was okay. Because my husband at that moment was also, he was undiagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. And so he would wake up to try to help with the baby, and he would shuffle across the room and his bones would crack. And he was like, oh I'm so tired. And he lost 40 pounds, and it was so weird. And at one point he couldn't put our baby's Eliza's socks on her feet because it hurt him too much.
Oh, wow.
And he's a screenwriter. So he needs his hands. And I was like, what is going on? You need to go to a doctor. And I'm so glad that I had some form of support so that I could be the one up all night by myself doing it. And so that he could, heal and start figuring out his own health.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
I was just going to say.
I'm just so excited to talk. I love it. My house for 150 days.
I was just going to say, was he super supportive of you going back on it, on the medication?
It was annoying. He was like, I was like, you're pill pushing. You're starting to hurt my feelings. Yeah, he was down for it. And I didn't want to have to do, because when I got off it, I was like, I want to create a life where I don't need this. Because again, I do not suffer from, I don't suffer from deep depression or something that we could muddle through. With the anxiety. It just feels incredibly unpleasant, and I don't make the best life choices when I'm suffering from it. And it stops me from doing a lot of things. right? Like the anxiety, like there's so many times that I was invited to do a podcast or something and I just would totally
see, Roxy, that's me.
Yes.
I do. I actually walk into every fire, but I don't want to. It doesn't feel good.
Yeah. But you do it anyway.
But it doesn't feel good.
So what makes you guys walk into the fire? And then do you feel good once you're in the fire?
No. I feel good when it's done.
I feel great in the fire.
But I think too,
how about you, Roxy?
I was just going to say, I was just kind of piggybacking on what Tammin was saying is that I think for you, Tammin, it's also like social, like you know, like you'd rather not be out at like an event.
But I love it also. Yeah. It's a perfectionism thing. Like if I'm not perfect and I don't say the perfect thing and I'm not acting the perfect way, or if I'm in the perfect environment with Roxy and I'm not like the perfect person at that party, I get anxious about it, you know?
I mean, I think for me, I sort of, and this might just even be like just getting older year by year, is I just have given less fucks. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm kind of like, and it's not to say like I don't get nervous or like kind of twisted if I'm like, you know, somewhere where I don't want to be or I don't feel uncomfortable. But I think like in the last, I'd say, especially couple of years, I've really tried to focus on just being like, who gives a shit? You know what I mean? Like if they don't like me or if like somebody thinks I'm whatever, like I said, and it's hard to do. It's not that it's easy to do. And it's not that it's not uncomfortable, you know, because there are times when I'm like, I just feel down about myself and I'd rather be at home or whatever. But I guess I'm trying to work on that. But I mean, now with this pandemic, it's like, you don't even have to be out. God. So it's like, you know,
I mean, Roxy, tell me if I'm wrong, but like, I think your anxiety doesn't come from that, but it comes from, like we talk about, Roxy and I talk about all the time, is being vulnerable. I think that's what makes you feel uncomfortable. You know, like everyone has their thing that makes them...
I can't wait till we do Atomic Moms now, Roxy.
I'm gonna diagnose.
You like to walk into the fire when it means being, and tell me if I'm wrong, I might be talking out of turn, when it feels like she has to like bare her soul. I think that's what makes her nervous.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah, I think that's why I love Atomic Moms. It's like the only time that I feel like I get to be truly naked and bare my soul. And it's always been great because the camera wasn't on. And so now this is like a new thing for me because usually I wouldn't do it on the computer and I wouldn't see anyone's faces unless we were across from each other in real life. And that always helped with my insecurity. Like there's something so terrible about like seeing myself in the corner right now. And I'm like, oh, where are my eyes going? It's like just that, the control issues.
We're all the same.
Yes, we're totally all the same.
But do you feel like I have a hard time saying yes and getting into the fire unless depending on my cycle, because when I had Kate Northrup on the podcast, she talks about tracking your cycle. And so I got the app.
Tammin is the biggest cycle tracker ever.
I'm all about hormones. I'm right now in my literal phase. I'm about to hit my ovulation phase. I know on day 10 of my ovulation phase, I'm going to be a total raging bitch, but on 11, I'll be nice. So like on day 10, I don't see my husband. By day 14, I've ovulated. I've got a great sweet spot. That's when I'm like out and about and I'm like sexy and cool. And then I crash 5 days before my period. I can't do anything. I cry. I'm depressed. I'm anxious. I gotcha.
And then the day after my period starts, things start getting better for me.
Okay.
And then that first week after, I'm rearing to go and I'm almost manic and I can get anything done. So now I just have to be careful about what I agree to, like when I agree to do something, because if I agree to do something when I usually want to be hiding under the covers, it's harder for me. But once I'm in it, I really enjoy it. And so like right now we're in this sweet spot where I'm like, this feels so good. And then I know at 3 a.m. I'll be like, you know, if an earthquake doesn't wake us up again, which by the way, everyone, we're pre-recording. We had an earthquake at 4:30 a.m. But I will then be tossing and turning again and being like, oh, why did I say that? Or I should have done this or that. And that also in the past has kept me from showing up.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah. So do you also have, this is like so random, do you also have sleeping issues? with like being able to sleep. Okay. Because this is a new thing that I've experienced. I think Tammin and I have talked about this, is having like inconsistent sleep. So that's obviously also probably due to hormones and flow.
Definitely.
And
estrogen.
Estrogen, right?
Well, and Tammin, I was doing some research and I heard that your husband is a snorer. And so like my sleep has actually gotten slightly better during the pandemic, because after Adam was in his like hole for a week, I just stayed moved out. And now I sleep in the guest room.
So you have to see this. I think it's genius. The last 2 weeks, my husband and I have been sleeping in separate bedrooms, and I can actually sleep at night.
It's been great. I mean, the thing is, I feel like there's a connection, and my insecurity does come out when we don't sleep together, because we haven't slept together probably for a good, I mean, he'll say this isn't true, but probably for a good 2 years, because the snoring will be so bad, right? So what happens is we'll fall asleep and I'll want him there. And then every time, you know, that like half sleep, you're just about to get into that dream state, it'll be like, and I'll just be up. And then I get mad because I'm like you, Ellie, like if I don't sleep, my hormones are off. My anxiety is terrible. I'm snappy with my kids. Like I have to sleep. So then I kick him out at 1 a.m., 2 a.m. in the morning. And then when I kick him out, he can't go back to sleep because then he starts getting anxious. So it's this terrible cycle. So I just have to realize you have to do what works for you and your marriage and your family, and fuck the rest, you know? We have a marriage. I've been with him for 13 years, love the shit out of him. I seem to be swearing a lot when I'm talking right now, but I love him so much. But we have to realize that this might just be our cross to bear. We might not be sleeping together, and that might be okay. Yep.
There's something to be said for it, I think, you know?
It's funny. I have a friend who has slept in a separate room from her husband for a long time, and was always very secretive about it. And I just think I'm oblivious to how bizarre it is, because it's always been sort of my dream. Like I had a birthday a couple of years ago where all I wanted to do was go to a hotel room by myself. And I did that. That was my birthday. It was like, and it was great, because then the next morning my husband and my kid at the time, my one child at the time, like showed up and it was great, but I got to sleep in that bed by myself and not have anyone else in that room. And there's something about being a mother and being so overtouched and having like, I mean, especially now, of course, but like the constant interruptions and feeling like I am constantly in reaction to others. That is so infuriating. Thus the Zoloft, because it takes off the edge. I can sleep a little less and I'm able to go with the flow a little more. But it's hard. You were asking about the work stuff, which I just like totally sidestepped, because there's no easy answer. I think we're going to hopefully, because my parents had COVID, we're going to drive and see them soon. And hopefully they can take over some, so we can we're writing, my husband and I are writing the screenplay right now, and like, we got to get it done. And so I'm hoping that my dad, my amazing, incredible stepmother, I really wish there was another word for stepmom. It feels like a really unfair word. Thanks to Disney. But
right.
I'm hoping that the COVID stuff is true and that they're going to be our perfect antibody nannies, because it's very difficult right now. And all I can think is like, what are these little spurts of time where I can get as much done as possible? My family's gotten better at knowing, don't interrupt me. Like if I'm in the middle of something, and it used to hurt my husband's feelings, but now this has been like a really intense pressure cooker for all of us. And I think we're all figuring out like what we need from each other. And for me, it's to sleep in the guest room. And like, if I'm on minute 19 of a 20-minute Peloton class, like, do not interrupt me, Adam, because I'm like riding my high.
Yeah, no, it's true. Okay, this is good to know because we're trying to like navigate, especially the sleep issues. But like being in the pandemic, I mean, some people have obviously like thrived being in the pandemic. It's brought their relationship together
Ding, ding, ding.
closer. Here we go with Tammin.
I'm stuck at home. I'm pretty happy.
Yeah, totally. Has that been the same for you, Ellie? Like, are you enjoying being at home, like in this sort of a situation or?
It's so funny. This is so funny for me because I'm so used to being the one and I have like so many questions for you, Roxy. So like we have to remember for Atomic Moms, so because I want to know your answer to this. There's so many things I don't miss. I think that we had been complaining that we were in an unsustainable rut, I guess I'd say, pattern. I was driving our 2-year-old to preschool like 20 minutes away, and then driving the 6-year-old to kindergarten another 20 minutes away. So then it was like an hour and a half by the time I dropped both kids off and got home in the morning. And then you feel like you have to pick them up in the afternoon already. And then it became, I hate driving anyway.
Same.
Like that, and I have a lot of anxiety about it. Like
Same.
I've always been a terrible driver. I hate it. It stresses me out. I feel completely out of control. And my driving routes, like you think you're taking your kid to this like idyllic preschool that has like butterflies, but like to get there, it was like Hollywood Boulevard and like just like horrible billboards of like people's bodies getting like hacked open and whoever is like singing naked in the middle of the street, you know, like Los Angeles was getting exciting before the pandemic. So we felt rushed. It felt like the weekends were our chance also to like catch up on work. It felt like my husband was complaining, and this is so rich with irony, but like he was not having enough time with the kids. And he loved like his swan song. He'll kill me for this. It was just always like, if I could just be the stay-at-home dad, like then I would be very happy. And I'd be like, well, we have this house and you're the one. I'm not making any money on this podcast, so keep typing. But now I think he's let go of that dream a little bit. But there's so many things I am happy about. I'm so happy that I spent this many years, my mother would say probably like navel gazing, but trying to figure myself out. Like, what do I like? What am I about? Like, what do I show up for? Like, what gives me energy? What is important to say right now? What do I want to when my kids look at this moment in history? And again, like what we are both doing with our shows is like creating a recorded legacy for our children. And they're going to love all the sex jokes, guys. I promise.
Probably not.
But we, you know, I try to have having children has made me realize that it goes by so quickly. You know, living in Los Angeles, there are no seasons. So it can feel like nothing's happening. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I've been here. You know, my husband and I have been married 13 years last week. And you're like, where did the time go? But when you have a little child I keep having to log on to Target to buy new clothes. Like, I'm like, how are you already a 7? Like, I want to say 7T because I want to keep them little. But how do I, you know, this is a moment in history. Things will keep changing. When I look back on this time, how have I spent it? My husband has spent it figuring out sourdough bread, and it's so annoying because he's always doing it. And I'm like, can you just empty the dishwasher instead of doing the sourdough bread? But what did we do? Who did we spend it with? Who did we reach out to? What do we want to keep in our lives when the world starts turning again? And what do we want to shed?
Well, I'm crying, as you can tell. It's probably because I'm ovulating. So that's why. But I'm crying because, and like, I haven't actually cried on this podcast, but like yesterday, I like folded, Lennon's, Phoenix's clothes, and like, she's like a girl. She's not a baby anymore, And like, again, this is only because I'm ovulating. No, just because of what you said just got to me. I just thought like my baby's not a baby. And I like sat there and I put on Taylor Swift and I listened to her because when you're sad, you have to put on like Taylor Swift. And so I sat there and I listened to her whole album just sobbing because I was like, giving Phoenix's clothes to Lennon. And I remember Phoenix being in that. And there's like a loss, there's a loss that like you're never going to have your baby back like ever again. And I don't know if, mothers, I mean, I'm sure they all feel like that. And I know Roxy like keeps it together. I'm sure she's had a few breakdowns about it.
Yes.
But I'm just like it's gone.
Yeah. You never know when the first lasts are, like the last time that you do like whatever that, and that's scary. That's like a scary, sad. I totally sympathize with you, Tam, because it's like, that's a scary, sad thought. And it's like, yeah, I mean, it definitely gets to me. It's like, you just don't know when it'll be the last time that she wears that dress or that she asks you to help brush her hair or help brush her teeth. It's like, you never know when that last is. So it's
and
like
you go through, you go through your days and you like don't think about it, you just go, oh, that's sad, and then sometimes it just gets you. And you're like, wow.
Somebody wrote on Instagram, I wish I could remember who it was, about you never know when the last time that you like carry your kid on your hip.
Yeah.
And so then I like read that and I was like, Eliza, get over here. And I like put her on my hip. I was like, oh, she's really heavy now. But I also, and like, I don't remember the last time that I nursed Eliza. Like, I don't remember that moment. And so that also made me think like second children, woof, I always like get down on myself for not writing a diary because especially with the second, it's like all a blur, right? Like you're still trying to chase after your first. And then I can't imagine when you have even more. But it is when I can look at this time, with a little distance and see that it is such a short moment in history. And also, so like I'll take videos and I'm always looking at it through the lens of like how my dad took videos. Like I want to see, what did the living room look like? And I would get so mad at Adam because he would do the video. And I know every mom experiences this with photos, but like, if he's doing a video, like you better put the camera on me. I mean, because I'm a narcissist, but also because like my kids are going to want to know like how strung out I look.
They don't.
No.
Like the husbands never, ever. No. And I said to my husband the other day, I was like, you don't have one picture of me. And he's like, that's because you have so many for social media. And I said, but I don't want that. I want what you see.
Yeah.
I want your vision of me. Like, and I'm always like thinking like, what if I die? And then there's going to be all these social media stupid pictures. Like, I want like, the picture of like him, me walking and then he puts it on slow-mo and I'm like laughing with the kids. Like, I want that video to be at my funeral, Well,
I think, God, we are the same. I was on the Peloton this morning and because it's the only thing that keeps me sane. And I was thinking like, oh my God, we're going to release this podcast in a few weeks. Like, what if I die on our drive? And then I was like, because I'm in a fight with my mom about the COVID stuff. And I was like, oh my God. And then she'll listen to this podcast and she'll.
It's your last greatest work.
Exactly.
It is what's going to put you on the map after you die.
I was like, will they even release it? Or would that be too sad?
I think that shit, it keeps me up for, I literally have scenarios I play over in my head about things that will never happen.
Well, that's part of the reason why I don't sleep at night, because I have the anxiety about death. That is one thing I do definitely have anxiety about.
Yeah, both.
And Cameron has it too. Yeah, like about death. And it's like, literally, it will, all the different scenarios, like it'll keep me up at night. Like, oh my God, what will life look like after I'm gone? Like, will David remarry? Will,
That's what you're worried about. I just worry about what it feels like. And she's like, what's going to happen? Will my husband find someone else? Asshole.
I'm like, take it. And then it's like the uncertainty of what's next. I'm like, where do we go really? Like what? Yeah. I mean, I'm almost like jealous of people who have such a, who are so faithful and religious because they seem so convicted and they know, that like, this is the afterlife here. And I'm fine with, what comes next and all that. And I almost wish I had like something like that to because I'm questioning. I don't know. I don't really know where
Roxy,
we're going to go.
It sounds like we need to do some ayahuasca. That sounds like the moral of the story.
Yes, oh my God. Have you done ayahuasca?
No.
We need but you want to. You're too nervous to, but you would like to, right?
I'm way too nervous to, but I would like to.
Yes.
If I could be in some like clinical study, like at Harvard or something, and it could be like, because, there's also a lot of stuff about acid and if you could promise like a good outcome.
Yeah. You and me,
you wouldn't die.
Drugs. I'm too scared to take them. Well, and also they're bad for you.
And also,
but like, I want to know what ecstasy tastes like. They say not taste like, but they said that, if you're having problems in your relationship, there's been like this whole movement that you should go, obviously make sure your kids are taken care of, but go out somewhere and take ecstasy for like a night with your husband and see if you can reconnect through that drug, because it really does bring on that love chemical, and it's actually saved so many marriages. It's like this whole movement that's going on. So that's what we're doing this weekend. You're
like, Roxy, can you babysit?
Yeah. Well, I think on a tiny, pathetic scale. Because you did my whole life. But my whole life is like trying to figure out, not doing ayahuasca. Mostly, I'd be more scared about the travel, I think, actually, than even the drugs. But I have been trying, when I was growing up, I was a dancer and I loved it more than anything. And it was the place where I felt free and I didn't have anxiety when I was on stage and I felt so connected to everything. And I have been trying over the past several years to channel some of that stuff. And so I really connect physically to, it's so important for me if I need to change my state, like I have to do something physical, whether that's like jumping on my husband's rebounder that he has, like, cause it's like an autoimmune craze. It's like having a trampoline. So they're like jump, but that helps me. Or jump rope, any push-ups, anything. That stuff, like it's crazy. Again, stupid Peloton, and not just because I told my husband to buy stock in it, which is paid for itself over quarantine, by the way. Like it's bought the bike for us.
Who doesn't want a Peloton right now?
Right?
It's
it's mind blowing to me the difference my mood can have. Just 20 minutes of something like that, of like really grinding it out. And that's something that I just need. And then I can be nice. And then I can help clean the house and not hate it or hate, I can do stuff that I usually would be resistant to because I don't know if it's the endorphins or what. And so that makes me think that like with drugs, that makes sense. You can be open because you're making chemical changes. And there are ways, I guess I'm trying to say, kids don't do drugs, exercise.
But if you want to, with your husband, go out on the weekend and just,
that'd be amazing. Yeah.
Right. That's what all the kids are doing these days, huh? It's so funny. But so like
we're all like, yeah, that'd be amazing. Like we'll
just stop for a second and we're like
thinking about
weekend,
an escape.
Oh my God.
So how
to drive out into the desert.
Yes. Okay. So let's do a check-in. Let's see how everyone's doing like right now today in their marriages. Like what is the state of the marriage like today, ladies? Let's hear it.
For me, I'm learning so much about things that I need to be responsible for. I think before this pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
you feel like life is moving so fast that you can be any way you want to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that this pandemic for me has really put a mirror into how I can change and be better. And my marriage has always been really strong. And I just realized that like, it's really important. My husband is very selfless, and it's really important to treat people the way that you want to be treated. And because I'm a fire sign and I'm fiery, and yes, I do deal with anxiety, but I'm also loud and I like to laugh and be, big. And sometimes that can come across as aggressive. I need to look at myself and realize like where I can change. And that's what we were talking about, Roxy, about vulnerability of like, in fights, I'm usually, because again, the Leo comes out of me, I'm always right. I've always been like that. I was on the debate team. I was on the number 1 debate team. I was 3rd speaker. I was just like, if you tell me something, I will figure out how I'm right. But being right all the time doesn't ever get you to a healthier place. You just barrel over your partner. So I'm learning how to listen more, how to be more vulnerable, and how to realize where I'm accountable for some things that I want to change. And that's hard. It's hard to look at yourself and go, I don't like some parts of you.
Yeah.
And I think it's the ego and it's your id, where it's like, when you're in a fight or you always think that you have to protect yourself. So that's why the other person's an asshole. But, I don't know. That's where I'm at right now, is trying to be better.
Yeah, trying to be better.
Anyone else?
Roxy, I want to hear yours.
Oh, God.
That's why she asked the question.
I know.
She's like, F you, Salmon. I want you to tell me you're being an asshole.
Oh, God. I'm not going to lie. It's hard AF right now. It's just like, feels like almost 2 ships like going, passing. It's just like not being on the same page. And I think the pandemic like sort of really brought out like, it was easier before the pandemic to go to the office or go to an event or have all these distractions, but be able to escape, and it's like now it's just like day in, day out all the time. And it's just, I think our personalities are such that we need that absence away, just to like be in a good place. And I'm not going to lie, it's really hard right now. It's just like, I feel like we're disagreeing a lot. There's a lot of fighting. Like, it's just sort of like coming to a head. And it's like, I don't know if these things, maybe it is good that we're in this pandemic and we're forced to confront these things right now, but it's like, it's just, I'm not gonna lie, it's really fucking hard for us right now. Really hard, and it's like, and it's hard when you don't even feel like you want to fight anymore. So you just kind of cut yourself off. That's sort of how I feel right now. Like, I feel like I just like would rather just like cut off and not deal at all and just deal with my daughter and like have fun with her and like, do all of that versus like, going back in because you're going to get hurt again, So I don't know. It's kind of a shitty place.
Well, you're very good at being vulnerable, Roxy.
See, I was about to say,
really?
Look how far we've got.
I know. I'm like, oh my God.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, thank you.
I think it's incredibly unnatural.
Yeah.
And everyone says that, right? But like, I think we usually say that about having our kids around all the time because we all feel really guilty about like how much I don't want to see my children's faces 24/7 for 150 days straight. Like what? And to think I ever felt guilty about having a child.
Yeah.
Like I was ever like, I feel so bad I'm going out tonight. Like, if I could just smack old Ellie and be like, go to the ArcLight.
I know.
Get the biggest popcorn and enjoy the shit out of your life while you have the freedom. Because the lockdown is coming. Oh my God. It's so hard. It's hard. And it's been, because we also like, we have the way we were raised. So we all deal with these traumas differently. Right. And then all of a sudden it's like, yes, we have to take care of our children. And yes, we have outside, because people still, there are outside pressures. Like people still are pretending like this isn't going on. Like,
Yeah.
Which is good because we'd go really insane and be super depressed if everything really did grind to a halt. But I find myself having to say in emails like, hey, I haven't figured out childcare yet. Like everything's going to take a lot longer, or I can't do this right now because I have 2 children like underneath me. But my way to deal with, a pandemic would be at first to just charge through it, right? Like I got that Glennon Doyle interview opportunity and it was like riding high, and it was like, I'm going to buy every snack and every like a horrible frozen meat I'll never figure out how to cook. Like I went into I just go into overdrive.
Oh.
But the problem is this pandemic has gone on so long now that we don't have, I can't keep doing that. It's like so unsustainable. So then I have to sit with it, and then I have to deal with it. And at the same time, I'm living with someone who has his own bag of tricks of how to deal with things, and who was also, raised very differently than I was. And so it has hit him in a very different way. I'm definitely the extrovert in terms of socializing. And I think it's been really hard on introverts.
Yeah. Yes.
He used to love more than anything taking our 6-year-old to kindergarten. He just loved getting to show up at that school and say hi to the parents and the teacher and help Sabrina put her bag in the cubby. And he felt like he saw people for the day. And like that filled him up. He was like, this is a great community. I can say hi to everyone, and then I can go and I can be my like weird writer self and complain about having to do anything else. So I thought this would be great for him, like not having to leave, but it's been very hard for him because he doesn't have the ridiculous text chains that I have. He doesn't have these ways of connecting that a lot of women have found for themselves because we've needed to, especially in the early days of motherhood. Right. So, so he has had a sense of loneliness, whereas I've been feeling overwhelmed, and that's hard because it's like, I sleep in the other room, which originally really hurt his feelings. And then, so it's like, how do I show up every night? And that to me means like, I know that like during this time, like I'm not going to move the ball forward in traditional ways. And I cannot, I'm not saying that big things couldn't happen out of this. And like, we just sold a screenplay, so I guess it can, but I can't work at night. Like my kids suck at going to sleep. By the time they're asleep, it's 9 p.m. I can't do that anymore. I used to do that when my first one was little. I can't do it. So like now we watch Queer Eye, and my husband loves it, and we have the best time ever. So, but we have had, some major arguments where I would just shut down, like you're saying, Roxy. Like, I don't want to have this conversation. There's nowhere to run to.
Right.
Like, I don't want, it's very difficult. I think that we've both become much more honest, right? Because you can't distract or run away. And I think it does give the opportunity for marriages to be stronger. We just have to recognize that this is like totally insane. And it's like asking couples to scale Mount Everest with 2 children on top of it. Right. So like we need to all really give ourselves some grace.
Yeah. I mean, like that, what you're saying, grace, is what I was thinking. And I was going to say to you, Roxy, remember what's going on, like they always say don't get divorced before 2 years of having a child because you're in war, right? This is another form of war. Like you've never had this happen to you in your life or your marriage ever before. And of course you're going to be feeling this way. Of course, so many people are going to be feeling this way because you haven't ever been through something like this. No one has. So I think it's just giving yourself, and that beautiful word is grace and acceptance, that maybe this is just now because we're all just trying to navigate the situation as best as we can. And then the other thing I was going to say is the only way that I've ever found good communication with my husband is talking about how I feel. a lot of times we get together with our significant others and we say, well, you are this, or you feel this, which is a form of gaslighting. But, you know, saying like, well, this is how I feel and this is what I need. And when you do this, this is how I process it. And maybe next time, if you could do this, it would be better. I think when it feels less like an attack, then two people are able to come together and really communicate, because most of the time is not communication. And I think if you have those deep communications with him about things that you're dealing with and you're feeling about the marriage, then he can understand that instead of defending himself. Right. And him to do the same. And maybe because we have this thing in our marriage, every time we fight, I'm like, stop saying you. Seriously, we can have this fight, but you cannot say you in this fight. It's very hard to have a fight, an actual aggressive fight, without saying you. When you're like, well, I feel, you're not fighting anymore, you know?
Right.
So I don't know, maybe that's just something that I thought has helped me and maybe could help.
Yeah, it's got to be, you know, it's hard. It's hard. It's funny because I feel like I can put myself in a vulnerable place with my daughter, but not with him. Maybe
because she doesn't judge you.
Right. And she's not hurtful. You know what I mean? Like, maybe that's what it is.
My 6-year-old is incredibly hurtful.
Mine is very mean. Yeah, she's not mean, but yeah, she says some things.
You're so lucky. Mine is. My child knows. She's going places for sure. I just have to make sure she's on the right side of history. She's like, oh my God, growing up, she's 6. I've always thought she was like 20, but she's always been. Anyone who knows her will know what I'm talking about. Like, and anyone who's listened to the podcast for this many years knows, like, this kid just came out of the womb, like, ready to, I don't know, to rule the world. And she just says, like, yeah, the cruelest thing.
Like what? Like, give us an example.
Oh my God. She has said terrible things. Like, you're a terrible mother. Like, she knows what everyone's weak spots are. The problem is also she's obsessed with villains and always has been. She was like 2 years old. And so then she so I've had to like stop letting her watch certain shows because she has such a quick memory that she'll just repeat lines from like any of the mean characters. So we're currently on a Mr. Rogers cleanse where she's only allowed to watch Mr. Rogers. But I hear you about because here's the other thing. My Achilles heel was thinking I was a terrible mother, right? And so, or that I never expected I'd be a good mom. So I didn't have like high expectations there, which made it helpful for the podcast. Cause then I was I've never, I came at it with like a beginner's attitude, not like I had something I needed to defend about my way. But it's been, I'm like, I just lost my train of thought. I'm touching. So she did just give me these lucky charms for the interview. She like gave me these charms. She's like, this will bring you good luck. I'm like, okay, Sabrina. So she does have a sweet side. But I was always afraid that I was unlovable. Like I've always had that fear, that there was something wrong deep inside me, that would be found out. And so that doesn't feel nearly as true anymore. It doesn't resonate in the way it used to. Like I just said it now and I'm like, oh, is that really true? Like, I don't totally feel that way anymore. Like I've done a lot of work and I feel much better. And I can look people in the eyes now and I'm not afraid of what you're going to see. But, but she knew that there was that I was afraid that she wouldn't love me, or I've always been afraid that I'd have the same relationship with her as my mother and I have. Right. And so she just stirs that pot they know. I mean, everyone who loves us knows what our weaknesses are.
Mhm.
And she has the upper hand there. And she knows that clearly all I want more than anything in the whole world is to have this like beautiful spiritual relationship with her that like lasts for all eternity. So she's going to shit on it. And I think
Maybe that's what you need. Maybe you get given what you need.
Yeah. And my husband is, but I hear you that he definitely hides with her. Like they are so simpatico.
Oh,
and
nice.
they don't have any friction. And she would love to marry him and like cast me out. And
now.
So he does, I have found in the past that he does a similar thing where it's like, he just like really needs to spend a lot of time with her. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, yes, you're an incredible father, but are you also spending a lot of time with her? Because like, you don't like, we need to have our time. Right.
Yeah.
And so I've had sort of like more the masculine experience of that, of like, wait a minute, my husband's like burying himself in the children and like, but what about us? And I've been like, no, we need our time. We got to shut the door. The kids got to go to bed because we need to watch Queer Eye together.
Yeah.
So, but that's also like what you were saying, Taman, about the aggressiveness of our fire signs. And so like for me as an Aries, and because we're all like our roles as mothers, like we're calling the shots all the time. Like we're exhausted from our executive functioning. Like we're just always making these decisions. And so then when it's time to soften and like cuddle with our partner or hear them or make space for their vulnerability, it can be very difficult. It's not my natural. Like I have to just change gears. It's very hard for me to like, soften in that way. Yeah. Because I'm like, got to get the kids to bed. Got to do this. Got to do that. Yeah. And then it's like, oh wait, now I'm supposed to like just
be this like, like a reassuring, like I'm so bad about that too. Is like, I can be reassuring with my daughter and like have that like very motherly experience. But it's really hard for me to do that with my partner. Like
and they need it though.
They need it. I know you're right, but
we need it. They need it.
We need it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's true.
I did. My girlfriend Honora did say recently, because we were on like a Zoom talking about sex and like when people have it. And I know, Taman, you schedule it Tuesdays and Fridays.
I don't really. That's just something I say. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't. But I don't wait. After 4 days, it becomes an issue for me.
Really?
Like it becomes, I get aggressive and mean, which is like so hot to have sex with. You're like mean mommy. But literally like I'm starting to get a little pissy today because it's been 4 days and I'm like, and then he retreats away because I'm not like sexy. I'm just angry, you know?
Right.
But every 4 days I start to get a little, you know.
But clearly it turns sexy for you, right? Like, I mean, you guys, once you started, it gets sexy.
Yeah, unless I'm like mean about it and like, come on, have sex with me. The thing is, if we're honestly talking about looking at ourselves in the mirror, I think it's less about sex for me and it's more about feeling loved. And sex has always been, from a girl that was teased a lot when I grew up and was overweight, sex was a validation that I was enough. And sex to me was that the man wanted me. And I'd never really gotten that before. So I got addicted to that. And I didn't, thank goodness, go crazy. I mean, I had lots of boyfriends, but I didn't go sleep around. But I was a serial dater because I couldn't actually leave a relationship till I jumped into another one. Because sex to me meant validation. And validation meant I was good enough. And so I still, if my husband doesn't want to have it because I'm an angry, mean mommy, it really affects me. And I have to check in and go, is it the sex that it's affecting you because you're like so turned on? Or is it the fact that you think it's rejection? And it's always the rejection because, I'm not an 18-year-old boy. I can wait, I can wait a day. It's the rejection that is my problem that I have to deal with. And I think that's where the sex thing comes in.
I see. Okay. How about you, Ellie? Like, are you guys hot and heavy these days or?
I think I would say I'm married to a very good Midwestern boy whose mother listens to every podcast of every show.
Like, same, Midwestern, same.
Oh my God. But, and like, yes, so I'll be careful here. Even though I know it's no fun. I think, and again, because I protect my 3 a.m. self, that's sort of my new thing, is just like, how do I protect my 3 a.m. self so I don't toss and turn about what I've said or shared? But I think, I would say, Tammin, that I would like to know how you have kept it so that your partner is that is still validating, right? Like, because I think I'm not alone in feeling like I was, oh my God, we just watched Normal People. Did you guys watch it?
No, I haven't seen it.
Oh my God. It's so sexy.
Is it?
It's so incredible. Oh my God. It's unbelievable. So they're like, the first time that they have sex, it's like very awkward and uncomfortable. And it made me kind of think about my past. And I was like, oh, why is this giving me such a terrible feeling? Because it doesn't feel, it's consensual, I guess, but there's like some question marks around it. It doesn't feel good. But then once they're like madly in love with each other, it's the most beautiful sex you've ever seen. And it's nonstop and it's amazing. Oh my God, let's just all stop the podcast and go watch Normal People. But I would say that it's like, when I used to be like that as well, like dating, like there was nothing more validating for me than having a man want me. Like nothing more validating.
Right.
Just like totally messed up. But that's how it felt at the time. Yeah. And then I'm married for 13 years and I love him and he's very sexy and I love nothing more than the way his sweat smells.
Oh, same.
Like,
Every time you talk, I'm like,
I used to bury myself in his armpits.
Same, even like, bad smell. Oh, I love it.
I loved how, like, so it's not about him at all. The thing that seems to, but we love each other and it's comfortable. And there's something off a little bit in me about connecting that with sex, that the love and acceptance and the comfort does not equate to automatically to hot sex for me, because I probably be being taught that sex is wrong and that I should be ashamed of my body. And so it gets looped up in that.
Right.
So that's been, it would be nice if it felt bad. I guess it does. The problem is also then I have to also unwind. Like and that's what my girlfriend said on the Zoom call. She was like, I was like, what do you do? Because I'm just so tightly wound and I feel so masculine.
Sex unwinds you.
And she was like, I take a bath or she's like, I stretch beforehand. And I was like, okay, but actually that makes sense. Like, how can we have to set the mood right now in all areas of our lives. Right. So like set the mood before you have sex, like set the mood, like whether it's like listening to music, if it's a scent, whatever, something to transport you out of the day-to-day grind. I think also set the mood for when you have to have those like really difficult conversations with your partner, Roxy. Yeah. Because my husband loves to just like, I'll be stepping out of the shower, like ready to do this. And he'll be like wanting to share something about tomorrow and his health. And I'm like, I can't talk about this right now. Like, I'm going to be worried about you if we have this conversation. Like, I need to do this. So it's about setting the mood there. Like, when is it okay to have real conversations? And I think people blindside each other all the time and it's bullshit. Yeah. Like, you're like, this isn't a good time. Like, it's 4:30. I'm really grumpy. Yeah. I'm waiting to have my glass of wine at 5. Like, now is not the time.
Don't dump out. Don't dump out.
Yeah.
There's this great, and that like, I heard this somewhere that said like, the person who can do the dumping out. Hey guys, sorry. The person who can do the dumping out is the person who hasn't got the most on. Does that make any sense? Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Oh, interesting.
That makes a ton of sense.
Right? Yeah. So if you're the one that can like
coming in and robbing my house, but I'm like,
we see a robber behind you in Zoom.
Yeah. Don't dump in.
The lamp is taken.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think my house was just robbed. I'm like, dog, stop being a guard dog. But yeah, you got to be careful when you dump in. I think that's what I was trying to say. You got to be careful when you dump in.
When you're the dumper, right?
Yeah, like if my mom is going through something massive, I wouldn't call her and then just dump all my shit on her, right? Just the same thing. If I'm going through something massive, she shouldn't call me and dump her shit on me. It's like we have to be aware of what other people are going through if we can. Sometimes you can't. But I also think, like you said, Ellie, like you can also say as have boundaries and say, you know what, I can't right now. Like I can't talk about this. I care about you. I'm just dealing with some things, and have your own set of boundaries. So people used to dump on me all the time, and it would affect me, and I couldn't perform and I couldn't do my job. And I think we're allowed to, as women, I think we're always asking permission. It's like, oh, am I allowed to say this? Can I say no? Can I say I don't want to hear it right now? Whereas men, I feel like don't do that. They just say like, I can't.
Yeah. It's true. It's like, are we being rude? Are we not being like, are we being too selfish?
Right.
If we put ourselves first for once, which is something we need to do more of,
I feel like we could talk for the rest of our lives.
And then really fast, and then we got to record.
Totally.
My kids are going to be home.
But I do want to say that it's really, where is my brain, Ellie? Let's go. It's important also because we say, set your boundaries and say like, now's not a good time. But I think another important element to that is like, he might get upset, and that's okay too. And it's just practice, right? Because I did it a few times and he wasn't used to it, and he was like pissed off because it felt like he was being rejected. Or like, what do you mean? And because he has really shitty boundaries that I have, not, I guess I want to say profited off of for many years, where like he would drop anything if I had to share something because he's so sweet and that's how he was raised.
I know.
So, but he's got to learn not to do that too, right? But I think it's that if we can say it with love and kindness, and then also circle back later and be like, hey, I really do want to hear what you wanted to tell me right before this interview. I really want to hear it now. Like, can I hear it now? And I'm sorry, I couldn't be there in that moment. I just had so much going on, and I knew that I couldn't,
take that on too.
Take it in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes it isn't that important to them. Like whatever he was going to share wasn't that important, but I know it was something I was going to chew on this entire conversation.
Totally. Oh, Ellie, forever.
Please be our friends, please.
Yes, come hang out with us. But Ellie,
quarantine.
Yeah, exactly. But we have great news because we're going on Atomic Moms right now, so we get to talk more. But Ellie, can you let everybody know where they can find you?
Absolutely. So on Instagram, just go to @AtomicMoms. I also have the website, atomicmoms.com. You can go on any podcast app. I have over 165 podcasts with some really incredible human beings that I think you'll like to hear from. And I have a newsletter, although with the quarantine, that's been a little, just sign up for it. Don't worry, I'm not annoying. You'll get one a month. It's great. And then my husband and I are working on a movie right now called Let's Have Kids, and hopefully that'll be out in theaters in a year or so. And my husband's directing it. And Tam and I want to talk to you about directing.
I feel like we could swap husbands and we would still have the same life. Because we'd be like, still writing with your husband and still direct. It would be the same thing. It's like the same thing. They're both from the Midwest.
Except I do not need to have sex every 4 days.
Okay. But my husband doesn't either. So you guys would be perfect for each other. He would probably like to not have it as much as I force it onto him. So,
oh my God.
Thank you guys so much. And I can't wait to continue this conversation over on my podcast. And I can't wait to hear more. Roxy, get nervous. We're going to get nervous. Intimate.
It's going to be all out there.
So you can find us on Women on Top Official on Instagram.
And Women on Top Podcast on Facebook.
And I'm Tammin Sursok.
And I am Roxy Madding.
And we are
Women on Top.